we need to talk about the Great Fire of London. That happened in 1666. But according to the newspapers today, the story in the Observer is one on Mail Online. Here's a headline from Mail Online. Did the capital narrowly avoid a new Great Fire of London? Expert says unusually low winds stopped dozens of blazes spreading across the city on Britain's hottest day. So back in 1666, virtually the entire city was destroyed by a massive fire that spread across the city, and there were winds that fanned the flames. Now, of course, we had these 2 hot days at the beginning of last week. Both one day was about 40 degrees, very, very hot, definitely, no doubt about that. There were some fires, but did we narrowly avoid a new Great Fire of London? I think I can answer that. No. It's bad. There's a village called Warnington over near Essex on the outskirts of London that got hit hard. Fields got caught on fire and a fair few houses were burnt as well. But this was conflated into Britain is on fire. Tinderbox Britain explodes into flame. My point is, I'm not trying to undermine the importance of what happened in Warnington or the fact we did have 2 very hot days and there were a few fires. There's one going on to the west of London right now. I mean, blazing fields are not new in the summer. We do get them. As I say, I'm not trying to negate that or to in any way suggest that that's not quite important and obviously very harrowing for the poor people who've lost their homes. But there weren't that many homes burnt and not that many fields. Britain was not on fire. To conflate this into possibly we could have had the Great Fire of London. I mean, this is catastrophizing on an epic scale. So, I mean, what is going on? Why are we so hysterical about this? Of course we have to take it seriously, but to just say, we've had a couple of hot days, climate change has set this country on fire, is just not acceptable, to be honest with you. When did we become like this as a nation? Why are we so hysterical? We used to be known for moderation and sensibleness, and yet now not so much. Let's talk to visiting professor at London South Bank University. He's also author of Energize, A Future for Energy Innovation, Professor James Woudhuysen. Hello, James. A long time. How are you?
Good afternoon. Great to be back with you, Kevin.
Yes, I mean, as I was just saying, I don't want to undermine the fact that we had 2 very hot days and people are worried about climate change and a few fields caught fire and very sadly a few houses were incinerated. But to say Britain's on fire and we came close to a new Great Fire of London is hysterical catastrophizing that I think is childish and irresponsible.
Well, I think that's quite right. I mean, the report was in the Observer, which is not a neutral source. I'm not going to quarrel with the professor from Imperial College, who's an expert in fire. I think, although counterfactuals, Kevin, are always dangerous, had the winds been faster than 14 miles an hour, more devastation would have happened to Wennington in East London or Essex, depending on what you think. Winds do accelerate fire. There's no doubt about that. However, to say that Britain caught fire is part of a wider trend to elide, to collapse into each other, 2 very separate categories. One is weather, which is a daily, monthly, seasonal, yearly kind of thing. And the other is climate, which is a decade-long, century-long, millennium-long phenomenon. Andrew Marr likes to go on the television and say, well, look at the evidence in front of your eyes. We're on fire, as you say, Kevin. Therefore, it's all climate change and you must drive a Tesla, he nearly added. That's completely wrong. We are better protected against fire than in the past. There's a need for greater protection, I think. In other countries like Australia and America, quite a lot of fires are started not from domestic cooking or something, but deliberately by arsonists. And sometimes even it is suspected eco-arsonists. I'm not saying that happened here. What I am saying is that if you look at the fatalities per 10,000, I think it is, I've got a chart, that they've been gone down from about 18 per 10,000, or maybe it's a million actually, I'm sorry, to about 4. Anyway, the 18 and 4 are the important figures between 1982 and 2022. So in 40 years, we're seeing far fewer deaths. That may be a reason why it's possible that the fire services, which acted very swiftly in the case of this exploding compost, it was very near to a fire station. It may be that decline in fatalities may be a reason that the fire services have been run down over the past 40 years. I don't have the numbers on that just yet. But the general belief that the planet is on fire, that Britain is on fire, and that, you know, climate is the same as weather. Every time it's hot, it's climate change. Right now, it's windy here in Putney, and therefore, and it's coolish. So are we on the verge of a new ice age? I've got to ask.
Here's another thing, James. This is they said this is going to be the hottest summer on record. I don't know if you're old enough to remember back to the coldest summer on record. That was last year, 2021. So it's this catastrophizing, this hysterical reaction to hot weather. I mean, it was announced that experts say thousands will die on Tuesday. That was this time last week. I mean, we haven't got the figures in yet, but is that in any way helpful? And why does the UK Health Security Agency feel the need to nanny status with announcements like, don't forget to drink water, try to stay in the shade? It's pathetic, isn't it?
Well, it's incredible. I think everybody's taken a leaf from Patrick Vallance and Chris Whitty's book during the COVID lockdowns. There are many more health agencies. One of them is called the Meteorological Office nowadays, which dispenses this utterly patronizing advice to drink water. And I think that's a great pity. If you can't comment on health, and when you've got the possibility of doing it, you don't get the TV time, you don't get the kudos, you don't get the research grants. We're all in the health business now. If we're in the commentariat, I'd rather not be. But for some people, it's a complete necessity to pontificate. What's really going on here is that it's a form, I'm sorry to sound old-fashioned, but I think class is coming back to Britain. It's coming back to Dutch farmers. It's coming back to Sri Lanka and Indian farmers. It's coming back to North American truckers in Canada's case and other things. And therefore, if you're interested in maintaining class rule, which the decaying, decrepit and incompetent ruling classes are in Britain, America and many other places, then what you say is, if you don't accept the evidence of your eyes that a compost heap means climate change and therefore you've got to turn down your thermostat, if you don't accept that there's a difference between having two X chromosomes and an XY combination, then you are an antediluvian Nazi piece of scum, and I'm going to rule you and, stop your hate speech and investigate your Twitter feed and all of that. It's a way of sort of ideologically blackmailing the plebeian elements in society who are growing, and they know that they're growing because of the rising inequality in the world. It's a whole way. It's a ticket up to the elite. It's a ticket up to the technocracy, and it's a thumbs down for democracy every time they play that game. So, yes, they are hysterical. Yes, they are incompetent. Yes, they will never consider adaptation to climate. Rather than what they prefer is mitigation. Mitigation means don't have a shower, don't have central heating, and all of those things. If we had nuclear power, and as we will have in the next 78 years by 2100, we will have fusion power. That would help us deal with climate change and CO2 emissions. The doctrine that we should all just cycle from London to Birmingham or get in an electric car when most of our electricity remains powered by gas, that is really a disgrace. And the fact that they can get away with it now is going to change in the next few months when something hits the fan in autumn and winter.
I mean, we need to call for a more moderate response to hot weather, don't we? I mean, those 2 days last week, they were very hot, but the response, the conflation that went on to say this proves that climate change is now at a critical state, it's nonsense, isn't it?
Well, yes. I mean, this is what the science with the capital T and capital S really represent. It's browbeating people. And it's very wrong. Now, I couldn't work on Monday and Tuesday. I like to work, but I was wiped out by the heat, you know, the closeness. But one of the reasons the winds weren't faster in Wellington is that there was a heat dome over North Africa, and I believe the Iberian Peninsula as well. And it spread to us, I believe. I'm not very good on exactly that, but I believe that one of the characteristics of Monday and Tuesday was a low level of wind, and therefore the fire didn't spread. So, you know, if only people understood that it wasn't just climate change, it's particularly to do with a weather event, something different in North Africa, and how these work, then we could have a little bit more scientific inquiry in the spirit of Francis Bacon, the Royal Society. On nobody's word should we hang. You know, we are always skeptical, because skepticism is the scientific method. And what these people have to prove is that individual weather events really are caused by climate change. They can't, because they're entirely different categories. So, you know, the population has to wise up to all of this stuff, because lives, as you rightly said, I'm not minimizing what happened in Wellington. Certainly not.
Nor am I.
No, you didn't. And that's quite right. Lives are at stake.